Bosses are one of the most memorable parts of video games. Whether it's the Ender Dragon, Bowser, or Dr. Eggman, they all create a lasting impact on our lives. In this video, I'm going to go into an in-depth analysis on what makes a boss fight good and what makes a boss fight bad. Needless to say, there will be spoilers ahead. There are a few key things a boss fight needs in order to be good and memorable, the first of which being the reason the boss fight is happening in the first place. Typically, a boss fight appears in your game as either a test of strength or progress, or as a narrative piece that will allow your game's plot to continue. An example of a test of skill can be seen in the Jetstream Sam fight from Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Throughout all the fights in Metal Gear Rising, there's always some kind of gimmick that's involved in a fight, be that little critters attacking your ankles, or a man splitting apart into pieces that can't be hit. In the fight with Jetstream Sam, it's just swordsman versus swordsman. The player has to use all of the skills they've gained throughout the adventure so far against an enemy that fights the exact same way you do. This allows for a dynamic fight where the only thing you can count on is your own skill. For a look into narrative progression, RPG games are great contenders. For example, in Xenoblade Chronicles, from the very start of the game, players are set on a course to take out a mysterious-faced Mechon after it destroys their home. This makes the fight with that faced Mechon all the more dramatic when you finally come into contact with it later in the game. After defeating the enemy, a larger plot reveals itself, therefore sending the players further into their adventure.
No! No! Not like this!
A boss fight needs to feel like a boss fight. Now, obviously that statement is a bit vague, but what I mean is that a boss fight needs to feel like you are actually fighting a boss. The thing that separates a Goomba from Bowser in Super Mario Bros. Are things like appearance. Your boss should look powerful. Your boss should be able to let players know that they're in trouble. Good examples of boss fights that feel like boss fights are Ganon from Ocarina of Time and Hades from Hades. Both of these bosses are hyped up throughout each of their respective games, where during the story, the player is shown how powerful these characters are, through things like appearance, world building, like stuff they've done in the game world or to characters, and through dialogue. This makes the fights with each of these characters so much more impactful. This is the big bad. This is what your whole entire adventure has led up to. This is what a boss fight feels like. Despite good build-up to your bosses, if the boss fight itself is an uninteresting slog around, then it's not going to be a good boss fight. At the end of Super Mario Sunshine, the players are met with an annoying yet dramatic final level in a volcano, followed by a dramatic reveal of Bowser in a bathtub. This is an underwhelming reveal, followed by an underwhelming fight. You walk around an arena, being shot at by some bullet bills, Bowser breathes some fire, you launch yourself into the air with the rocket nozzle, and then try to break apart Bowser's bathtub. Do this a few more times, and then that's it. The whole final boss, just walking around and breaking a bathtub. Another example of a boss fight that is less than ideal for multiple reasons is the Imprisoned fights from The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword. This fight is probably one of the weakest parts of the otherwise great game. You fight the Imprisoned a total of 3 times throughout the entire playthrough, with very slight differences between the fights each time. It's honestly more of a hazard than an actual boss fight. The Imprisoned, while daunting with its size and appearance, is just an oversized time bomb. The Imprisoned walks up a hill, and if it gets to the temple at the top, then the game is over and you have to start over. To stop the Imprisoned, you slash a stone spike on the top of its head a few times, and then it's over. Not only is this boss fight uninteresting, but it's repetitive. But hey, at least it's got a good theme song. Which leads me into our next topic, atmosphere. The atmosphere of a boss fight is almost as important as the fight itself. The setting, the music, the plot revolving around the fight is all just as important as the actual fight. The atmosphere of a boss fight is one of the most memorable things about the fight in certain situations. I'd like to take a moment to just show some examples of good atmospheric boss fights that hopefully will be able to get my point across without me talking over some beautiful soundtracks. I still think about these boss fights to this day, and actively listen to the songs from them all the time. Hopefully, these examples were able to show you what a good boss fight atmosphere should feel like. Overall, if I were to categorize the topics I've discussed into a bullet list, the things that make a good boss fight are good utilization of game mechanics, the boss needs to happen for a reason, whether that be skill, test, or plot development, the boss needs to feel like a boss, and the boss fight should have an encapsulating atmosphere. If you manage to check off all these boxes when making your boss fight, then you should probably be able to create a fight that will last memorably in your players' hearts. And this checklist doesn't even need to necessarily be used in a fight either. These could also be implemented into things like a final level or puzzle for games that don't always have fights in them. In the end, just make sure you've made something that you're proud of, and everything should be fine.